This episode of Midco Sports Magazine is presented by Shields and Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine.
Hello, welcome again to Midco Sports Magazine. We've got a heck of a lot of hoops in this edition. 3 stories of names that you probably know from the world of basketball. Well, one of those names is Miller, and we've got Paul at North Dakota State, who has played and not played through some tough spots to become one of the best Bison ballers ever. And the Millers from Mitchell, from Allen to Mike to Macy. We've got the story on all the Colonel connections that have made them the first family in South Dakota hoops. But we start with a trio of guys from Ellsworth, Minnesota. And again, names you probably know from their playing days not that long ago. They're still involved in the game, just in a different way. Here is Jay Elson.
On this January night in southwest Minnesota, the screech of a whistle echoes through the gym. The sound isn't unique to the game or the place. The source, though, that's a story. It began some 50 miles south in tiny Ellsworth, Minnesota, a town where hard work and commitment are a way of life.
My passion just comes from my parents. Pretty much whatever that they did, they had a passion for and showed me how to have a passion for, whatever I was into.
For Kurt Schilling, that passion was basketball.
You're just out there on a farm shooting on a small little tiny hoop. You have no idea what's in front of you when you're, 5, 6, 7 years old.
What happened would create a tremendous sense of Panther pride.
In small schools, you got to put some classes together, and we had 2 classes back to back that were pretty talented, so that that helps in a small school.
Kurt helped lay the foundation, but it was up to his brothers Cody and Casey, family friend Trevor Gruce, and a host of talented teammates to pick up the torch. Between 2003 and 2010, Ellsworth reached the state tournament 6 times, capturing 2 Class 1A championships and 3 runner-up finishes.
Before that, we had a lot of 2-win seasons, 5-win seasons. There wasn't the basketball culture. We had so many guys and we had so many good athletes in a small town of 460 people. We really made some nice teams and some nice runs.
I think I went to state 5 years, played all 5 years, so not a lot of kids can do that. Small town, you can get lucky and do that.
Several players from that era, including Gruce and the Schillings, went on to play collegiately. Kurt competed in the NAIA National Tournament 4 times with Northwestern College. Trevor helped South Dakota navigate the transition to Division I before playing 2 professional seasons overseas. Casey won an NCAA Division II National Championship at Augustana. All 3, in their own time, ended up back in Ellsworth. At first, coaching seemed like the most natural way to stay connected to the game.
There's a lot of other things that go along with coaching as well that a lot of people don't see behind the scenes. That I just really wasn't in the mood to deal with that all the time, especially on the farm. I was running back and forth. It just seemed like I didn't have any time for family anymore. And so I just wanted to move on to something different.
After a little personal consideration, Kurt approached Casey with an alternative in the summer of 2016.
When Casey was done at Augie, he said, hey, I think I'm going to get into coaching. I said, don't get into coaching. Let's go do some reffing.
Winter is a little slower time on the farm, and so we had some extra time, and it didn't take too much convincing because he was kind of like, hey, let's go do this.
So I emailed, every single athletic director within a 40-mile radius of Ellsworth and just said, hey, Casey and I are looking to get into reffing. I don't know if you want us to do your junior high, your JV, or your varsity games, but we are willing and ready to go.
In a matter of 2 weeks, Kurt had contracts in hand for about 35 varsity games. This season, that number has increased significantly, as has the size of the crew. Bruce signed on despite some initial hesitation.
I just didn't know whether I really wanted to be a ref. Not because I was afraid to get yelled at or booed out of a gym or anything like that. I just didn't know if I wanted to be that side of the basketball. I didn't know anything about it.
The biggest and most immediate adjustment, he says, was perspective.
I've always been used to playing and complaining to refs, so to speak, or, wondering what they're thinking, and then you get the stripes on and you see it from their angle, and it's like, okay, so this is quite a bit different.
As you might expect, there's been some bumps in the road, but things are feeling more natural by the game. Chemistry helps, of course, and that is as strong as it was in their playing days.
The more you ref with the same crew and your friends and stuff like that, you understand each other a little bit more.
I know them so well, I can ask them, they're going to be honest with me and help me out. So I think that's big, especially for me to become a better official.
They may be seeing the game in a different way, but the commitment to excellence that was established in Ellsworth still drives them. It's a new version of Panther pride.
A lot of people say, well, you're doing a great job of giving back. Well, I don't know if I'm really giving back. I think, the game of basketball is, giving me something too. Just to be able to go out and be a part of it is just really enjoyable.
And joined by Jay Elson. And all right, first thing, there's one shilling that is missing from this story, right?
Yeah, Cody Schilling, obviously a very accomplished player in his own right, now the head coach at Mount Marty College down in Yankton, but he actually holds the Ellsworth school record for scoring. Kurt, Casey, and Trevor were 2, 3, and 4.
All right, what about the other three guys? Are they ever going to do one of his games? Because that would be fabulous. Or what do they want to do?
Yeah, I think each of them have their own individual aspirations in terms of where they want to take this thing. Kurt says, he wants to do some college, already is doing some college, NAI level, JUCO level, and a little bit of NSIC on the women's side. Casey is starting to get into the college ranks a little bit too. He's got a little bit more focus to exactly what he wants to do. He wants to go on to the men's side and would really like to get into the Northern Sun on a more regular basis. Trevor, for right now, is kind of just focusing on getting better. This is still a little bit more new to him, and so he's kind of worried about mechanics and things like that, getting that part of it down for now.
And Bruce didn't want to do it initially, but
no,
it's gone well. Right?
He's the one that dragged his feet a little bit, but you get enough coaxing from your buddies, and eventually he caved. And I think now he's glad he did.
All right, thanks a lot, Jay Elson. Up next, a silky smooth scorer at North Dakota State who has not always made it easy on himself or his coach or his team on his way to becoming one of the best ever in the Bison basketball program.
Midco Sports Magazine on Midco Sports Network is presented by Shields and Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine.
Welcome back. Our next story is in Fargo at North Dakota State, where Paul Miller is coming to the end of one of those all-time great careers in Bison basketball. He's been a big matchup problem for other teams, and he's been a big headache, he admits, at times for his head coach. Here's Brian Shawn.
Sometimes growth and development are easy to see: height, muscle mass, foot speed, or vertical jump. But in other instances, it's more difficult to spot, and the pains that come with can be taxing. Paul Miller's growth at North Dakota State has been a process of continuous learning, which has included some tough lessons along the way.
Somebody once told me parenting and coaching would be the most challenging, but yet one of the most rewarding things that you ever do. Paul would tell you the same thing. We've both challenged each other in a lot of ways, but we've both grown together. We're both better off today than we were yesterday or last week or last year.
Growing up in Waukesha, Wisconsin, athletics were not a big part of life early on.
I had a group of guys in my elementary school that were all really competitive. My parents will tell you I wasn't really that into sports until I got to elementary school, and just being around those guys and always trying to win, always trying to compete just got me really into all sports, and especially basketball.
Once he got to high school, the hardwood was the main focus, earning a spot on varsity as a sophomore.
And I thought from my sophomore to my junior year was when I really developed and kind of took that next step and thought, hey, maybe I could play at the next level now.
Miller was offered a scholarship by 2 Division I schools. He signed with North Dakota State in the fall of 2013, but just a couple of months before coming to campus, head coach Saul Phillips left for Ohio, with assistant Dave Richmond taking over the program.
We hit the road to kind of go in the home of all of those kids that had signed and just see where they were at in the process and see if they wanted to stick with us. And Paul was the one guy that wasn't there.
Oddly enough, I was on spring break down in Florida, so I wasn't there, but my parents really liked the thought of that, of Coach coming to visit with us, and just showed that they were committed still.
Miller solidified his decision to stick with NDSU after a phone call from the only returning senior on the roster.
I got a call from LA right away, and he was like, what are you thinking, man? And I was like, well, what are you guys thinking? He says, well, we're all going to stay. And I was like, if you guys are in, I'm in, and let's do this.
The 6'3", 190-pound freshman made his way to campus and contributed immediately, starting 6 games and playing the 4th most minutes on the team. But the learning curve was steep.
I had a couple games where I scored close to 20 points, and I was thinking, hey, this is easier than I thought it would be, you know. And then I kind of hit a couple bumps in the road where I started to not play as well. I started to get down on myself, but you know, I thought the older guys always tried to help keep my confidence high.
Miller helped the Bison make a return trip to the NCAA tournament in 2015, and in his sophomore year earned a spot in the starting lineup, leading the team in scoring, until adversity struck.
Now Paul Miller is a little slow to get up down at the other end of the floor.
But yeah, that was tough, having to sit out and watch, and I don't think I was a good teammate about it either. I was like, hey, I'm hurt, I can't help you guys, I'll kind of just let you do your own thing, you know. And looking back on that now, 2 years later, it was probably definitely for me the lowest part of my career, and something that I wish I handled a lot better than I did.
Although not 100%, Miller was able to return for the Summit League tournament, helping NDSU get past IUPUI while struggling to regain his form. And just before the semifinals, the frustration finally got to be too much.
Look at Paul Miller on the bench tonight, again suspended for this contest.
As soon as he told me that he was going to suspend me, I was just devastated, you know. But looking back on it today, you know, I think it was something that I deserved. You know, I didn't think I deserved to play in that game with how I was letting my attitude affect not only how I was playing, but it was being a negative presence in the locker room. It was kind of holding some other guys back.
Your greatest strength is your greatest weakness at times, and Paul is uber competitive. And when you're not out there and when you're frustrated with how you're playing, that can then have a negative effect if you're not able to rechannel in.
Miller returned for the tournament championship game, with the Bison falling to rival South Dakota State. He started every game as a junior, earning first-team All-Summit League honors, but has continued to learn valuable lessons, even as a senior.
When we played at USC, I was so worried going into that game about how I was going to play. You know, we're at a top 10 team on the road. I'm thinking, hey, this is a great opportunity for me to go out and kind of showcase my talents a little bit on the national stage, and I kind of just did not play well at all, you know. After that, I talked with a lot of the coaches on the team, my parents, a lot of my former coaches, and they told me the best way to get yourself going is to start worrying about someone else.
I've seen the progress. It's rewarding for him to see the progress and to see some of those successes happen, and that's what I've been so pleased to see lately is Paul being able to refocus and understand by helping somebody else out, he can help all of us out.
Miller's education on and off the floor is nearing its end in Fargo, and when the time comes, he'll walk away with no regrets.
It's been a blast for me, you know. I wouldn't trade any of it. I wouldn't trade any of the highs, any of the lows. And hopefully people see that this year, you know, I'm starting to develop more as a leader and aren't just focusing on the basketball side of things.
He's going to go down as one of the all-time best to ever put on a uniform, make no mistake from a player standpoint. But I think what he and I would tell you is just how much he's grown from a leadership standpoint, from a personal standpoint. That's really even made him finish a special career even more special.
And joined by Brian Sean in West Fargo. And B, we talk in general about how great a career this has been for Paul Miller, but he really does have the numbers to back that up, right?
Yeah, he really does, Tom. You look at it. That really includes a 36-point performance earlier this season against South Dakota State. Most points scored by a Bison player since Ben Woodside scored 37 against Kansas in the 2009 NCAA tournament. And he's also the 6th player in NDSU history to record at least 1,500 points, 500 rebounds, and 200 assists in his career. He's really had a tremendous run since his freshman year all the way to his senior year.
Yes, very legit. And he's a numbers guy, too, when you talk about what he's studying and what he's going to do in the work world someday, right?
Yeah, it's one of those things you maybe wouldn't expect it, but he's a very cerebral guy. He's an All-Summit League academic honoree, and he's an accounting major. So he's a guy that likes to crunch the numbers and has that kind of analytical mind, which I think sometimes can help a basketball player when they get on the floor a little bit. They have that understanding of what's coming and what's happening. So we've seen him put that mind to use plenty of times as well.
All right, thanks, Bean. Well, coming up, more Millers, the dads and uncles and nieces and cousins, and the whole story of probably the most famous basketball family in South Dakota. But first, this month's Science of Sports.
Sports science is really understanding the physiology and the biomechanics behind athletic performance and health and safety. With Greg, we had him do the standing vertical jump test as well as the maximum vertical jump test. And these are two tests to see what the vertical range of an athlete is. So those are two really good tests to look at, not just how high can an athlete jump from a standing position, but if they're running and jumping, how much space are they able to cover.
Midco Sports Magazine on Midco Sports Network is presented by Shields and Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine.
Welcome back. We got peanut butter and jelly. You got spaghetti and meatballs. And you got notable basketball families in the state of South Dakota. And, well, there's a few, but the Millers in Mitchell probably come to a lot of minds as the family with the most hoops history. Here's David Brown.
Reading, writing, and arithmetic. The 3 R's are the modern tenets of our educational system. And they're also why the Miller family has become another R in the basketball world, royalty. Their work on the court is the byproduct of a text filled with numbers and scribbles, spanning well beyond 94 feet.
And I said, if you guys want me to buy you basketball shoes, you have to put in so many hours of work on the court. So we started out with a basketball book, starting with Tara, Jordan, all the way down the line. Left-hand layup, right-hand layup, crossover, good fundamental footwork.
Alan may be the patriarch of the book, but the real story is the work ethic established by his father. He's the 10th of Bob Miller's 11 children. And growing up in Stickney, South Dakota, basketball was firmly ingrained in the family's foundation.
My dad had an extreme amount of passion. If you've been around my dad, he just had fire. And for some reason, my brother Tom and Rob, they started off playing it, and Chris followed. By the time I was born, I figured, well, I didn't have any choice. I didn't know there was any other choice.
We had a gravel driveway for the time I lived there. And you had a few bumps and holes and stuff in the driveway. We had a plywood bank board. When he shot a bank shot, he made a lot of them because it just kind of stuck right there and then dropped in.
Tom Miller may have been the second of Bob's 11 kids, but he was the first to embrace the game his father loved.
A lot of times the neighbors would get mad and call over and say, it's 10 o'clock, and you tell the boys to stop pounding that ball over there.
Late nights and early mornings didn't diminish the passion for hoops. In a town with a population of less than 100 at the time, the Millers made a name for themselves through the game. It was Tom who led Stickney to its first district title in 50 years in the mid-1960s. And it was Alan who provided Stickney's first state championship in 1981. Both eventually went east to Mitchell and starred at Dakota Wesleyan University. To them, it was a bigger town with a bigger opportunity to play in an arena still known to this day as the world's only.
From where I came from, it was a cat's meow in a sense to be able to play at the Corn Palace.
The lighting is really interesting. It's like being on stage. It's just different. Just a great place to play.
Tom won 3 conference titles at Dakota Wesleyan and eventually moved to Mitchell when he became principal of the local elementary school. Alan still remains DWU's all-time leading scorer and followed in Tom's footsteps, becoming both an educator and basketball coach in Mitchell.
If you know me, I'm kind of a perfectionist. And I thought of all the things that I could do as I watched my players. What could I do to make a good basketball player out of my kids if they want to do it? I didn't want to overpressure them.
I had the keys to the gym being a principal. So to get them out of mother's hair, we went down there 4 or 5 nights a week and played ball.
Tom and Alan each had 4 kids who all played basketball to various degrees. Tom's oldest son, Ryan, was the first of the new generation to make a name for himself, earning a college scholarship to Northern State University in Aberdeen.
Family, education, and basketball, it's our family.
After a stint overseas, Ryan eventually found his niche in coaching, working for legendary college coaches like John Calipari and Steve Alford. He's currently an assistant at TCU.
I think I got a lot of knowledge and a lot of things to pass down to other people that can really help young men get to where they want to.
Next came Jared, Tom's second oldest son, who also played at Northern State with Ryan before eventually finding a job in car sales. It was Tom's third son, however, who would change how the Millers would be perceived forever.
We grew up in a culture of basketball, so we grew up in. I mean, you pop out, okay, where's the basketball? Let's play.
Blessed with height and skill, Mike Miller became a national recruit in high school, with the top programs in the country fawning all over him.
Quite a few of them flocked in, so that was an interesting time.
I think the family understood he had a chance to play at a higher level. I think people in South Dakota at that point, they weren't sure. And then Mike came on and said his goal was to go 2 years in the NBA, and I think people thought, wow.
Yeah, I said it in my press conference, and my dad wasn't real happy about it, but I wanted to choose a school that I could play 2 years, have a chance to win a national championship, and leave.
Mike eventually chose the University of Florida, and true to his word, he competed for a national championship his sophomore season, then left for the NBA, where he became the 5th overall pick by the Orlando Magic in the 2000 NBA Draft. A 17-year professional career followed, which included a Rookie of the Year award, a 6th Man of the Year award, and 2 NBA championships.
The same stuff I'm trying to instill in my kids. When you step on the court, whether it's the truth or not, feel like you're the best. You know what I mean? I always had that. I don't know what it was from, probably from my upbringing.
Tom's youngest, Chelsea, played for Mitchell High School and won a state championship with her cousin, Alan's oldest, Tara. Next on Alan's side came Jordan, who had to hear all about the success of his father and uncle.
We could never go anywhere without somebody knowing either one of them. So a trip to the grocery store took 45 minutes rather than the 15 minutes it should take.
Long errands aside, Jordan still loved the game, and he followed in the footsteps of so many before him, earning a college scholarship to Southwest Minnesota State University in Marshall, Minnesota. Alan's third child, Jade, followed in his father's footsteps at Dakota Wesleyan. And the last of Alan's kids is still going strong in Brookings at South Dakota State.
Being the youngest of 4, I saw it in all of them. They were always excited to go to the gym and, put in that extra work. There was no day off for them.
Macy understands she's the last one of this generation of Millers, the last one still playing at the game's highest levels. And like the rest of her family, she credits a different mentality as the reason the Miller name still resonates.
We're obviously known for basketball, but we also want to be known as just like a hard-working family. We didn't get where we were just solely on talent. We put in the extra time in the gym, and it shows.
We've learned from a hard-working culture here in South Dakota. The friendships, the people around us, they really pulled for us. And yeah, we just love the state.
We wouldn't be the Miller family if it wasn't for South Dakota. You know what I mean? Like, I truly believe that. I mean, it's just, I don't think we'd have done the things we did if we weren't from South Dakota. I mean, that's just who we are and what we do. I mean, South Dakota is us, and we're proud of it.
The family tree can get confusing at times, but it's only because there's been so much success among the branches. From high school titles to NBA titles, the Millers have a legacy firmly rooted in South Dakota that will continue to grow. The book keeping track of makes and misses may not be a published text, but it's symbolic of a story that still has new chapters to read, new pages to write, and new numbers to add.
Everything we do is for a family. When we won state championships in 1994, our family's first person there. When we beat South Dakota State in the 1998 regional championship, Mike was sitting front row. My brother Jared was on the court with me, and it's the first person to embrace when we won the game. Mike wins NBA Finals. We're all right there. Our family is the most important thing, and it's very prideful. Our family is very prideful for us.
And joined by David Brown. And Brownie, I love this story. There's so many elements of how they influenced each other along the way, but there was one coach that was near and dear to the Millers that kind of runs through all their stories as well, right?
Absolutely. We'd be remiss if we didn't mention the late, great Gary Munson, who sadly passed away in 2016 from a heart attack. But there was a time when the boys and the girls had separate basketball seasons. He coached both teams in Mitchell. Obviously, he stuck with the boys when they switched to the same season. But The common theme in all the interviews we did was the goal wasn't college. The goal was never the NBA. The goal was to be a Mitchell Colonel for a lot of these kids, and it's interesting just to see how much he influenced the legacy and how much he continues to influence the Miller family.
And I believe gave Skinny the nickname Skinny.
He did give him Skinny, so that's who we can thank for Skinny all these years later.
Thanks a lot, David Brown. Thank you for watching. You can find this episode and all episodes of Midco Sports Magazine on YouTube.
This has been Midco Sports Magazine, presented by Shields and Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine.